There are a number of different horror movies that I am never going to rewatch, and this is for numerous different reasons. It could be as simple as the movie just wasn't for me to begin with, there's something in it that just affects me on a different level, it's tainted for external reasons. All of these are valid, and there are many more. And while I don't think that you need to justify why you're not going to rewatch a movie, here I am talking about 8 movies that I am just never going to rewatch again. This is not the first time that I've done this list here on my channel, and if you are interested in the other 8 movies that I talked about that I am never rewatching again, I will leave a link somewhere on screen right now and again in my description bar if that's something that you would be interested in. But first, if you are new here, I go by Hordes, and if you're not new, welcome back. I talk about horror movies here on my channel on Mondays and Fridays, so if that is something that you think you might be interested in, maybe stick around and join the Horde by hitting that subscribe button, and if you're feeling extra generous, maybe click the like button as well, because that does massively help me out. And if you have any movies that you've decided that you're not watching for whatever reason and you want to share them, please feel free to drop them in my comment section down below. So without further ado, let's jump into the movies that I am not ever gonna rewatch again. Silent Hill Revelation from 2012 is a supernatural horror mystery. Sharon De Silva believes that she is on the run with her adopted father because he killed a man in self-defense when she was young. Now on the eve of her 18th birthday, living under the alias of Heather Mason, she is plagued by horrific nightmares and the disappearance of her father. Sharon soon discovers that he has been protecting her from a religious cult. The revelation leads her deeper into the demonic world that threatens to trap her forever in a place known as Silent Hill. Mini rant incoming with this one, because the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Silent Hill Revelation, if you were not aware, is based on the video game Silent Hill 3, and it does I can't even begin to describe how bad the adaptation is for this. If you are a Silent Hill diehard fan like myself, then you know this isn't it. Now, you had multiple different boss fights that you could have used in this movie as your main villain, but instead they decided to bring back Pyramid Head, aka the Executioner. And if you know anything about Silent Hill lore, no James Sunderland, no Pyramid Head. Every single thing that they changed in the plot of this movie, though, is completely pointless. It does nothing to enhance the story, and it just makes what was originally a really solid plot from the game into this, like, watered down, lukewarm version of this story. Now, the CGI in this is horrible. And I understand that part of this is because they decided to make this movie in 3D, and the director that they brought on to replace the original director even said how much of a nightmare it made trying to film this movie entirely in 3D, and they did Carrie-Anne Moss so dirty in this movie with those patchy eyebrows. So I'm going to go back on myself and say about Pyramid Head now, because I'm going to need somebody to explain to me why they thought this was a good idea, because they decided to go with a storyline for a character who is nicknamed the Executioner, who is there to represent guilt, repressed anger, and torment. They gave him an empathetic storyline. Like, who thought that this was a good idea? Because it goes against absolutely everything that Pyramid Head stands for. There is a reason that these games are so beloved by fans, including myself in this, and I do not understand why they decided to make all of these, like, little minute changes that were not needed. And it makes me sad because the material was already there to turn something that was already amazing into a solid movie. And yes, I am apprehensive that they are doing a Silent Hill 2 movie as well. If you want a full rant on my feelings of this, I will leave a video linked somewhere, because I have a full review here on my channel, because yeah, I watched this movie here on my channel.
We're sorry.
Saturday Morning Massacre from 2011 is a dark comedy spoof horror mystery. A team of amateur paranormal investigators on the verge of bankruptcy take on a case involving rumours of suspicious disappearances and violent deaths linked to the abandoned Chrysler schoolhouse. Despite the sheriff's advice to spend the night in a hotel, they decide to stay, but when the sun goes down, the truth comes out and the Kaiser house may actually be haunted by sadistic spirits or something even worse. You promised me a ScoobyDoo inspired horror comedy / dark parody, and oh boy was this a disappointment, because the material was already there. Matthew Lillard for years has been trying to get them to do an actual adult horror version of a ScoobyDoo movie, and I would be so on board for it if they got it right. All you've got to do is up the gore and the violence and make it a supernatural slasher movie, and there you go.
Scooby-Doo, take note.
Saturday Morning Massacre takes the stereotypes of Mystery Inc. and then completely ruins them, because you've got Fred and Daphne knockoffs who basically want to go off and bang each other in classrooms because they don't want to be there. Everybody else hates each other, and yes, there's a dog, but it's not even a Great Dane. But my big issue with this is it is ripping off so many other franchises, and I even made a list of everything that I spotted in just the first 20 minutes of this. 1. The bleeding walls from Silent Hill. 2. There is a creature that is a direct knockoff of a licker from Resident Evil. 3. There are 3 skeptics and 1 believer in this group. 4. There are Blair Witch style pentagrams absolutely everywhere. 5. The religious cult is basically the same cult from Silent Hill. 6. The school is built on a hellmouth like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. 7. The school is basically the same school from The Facility or the game Obscura. Like, it's not original in any way, and it makes me so sad, because the potential was that you had everything to make a Scooby-Doo inspired horror movie, and the ending of this is awful and it ruins everything. Just don't watch this one. I very rarely say to people, do not watch a movie, and I'm going to go out of my way and say don't do it for this one.
Save yourself!
Bear with me for number 3, because I am going to have to try and describe this one in YouTube friendly terms, so wish me luck with this one. One-Eyed Monster from 2008 is a sci-fi horror comedy. All hell breaks loose in the filming of an adult movie in the remote Carolina mountains. Male lead Ron gets struck by a meteorite, causing his human eggplant to detach, and he is taken over by sex-crazed aliens. After murdering Ron and the other actors on the production, it plans to take over the world through procreation, and now it is up to Jonah, an army veteran, and his remaining co-workers to kill the alien before it inseminates all of humanity. Now, I wouldn't normally bring something like this up, but it is relevant, so bear with me. In my original video, when I talked about 8 movies I was never going to rewatch, one of the movies I talked about was Death Factory from 2001, and in that video I mentioned how there is a cameo in it by somebody who has since been convicted of 21 counts of SA. Now, somebody in my comment section, thinking it was going to be an insult, but I'm going to wear it as a badge of honour, thought it would be an insult to say that I was woke because I don't want to watch a movie that stars a predator, and I personally think that that says way more about that person than it does about me, so thank you very much. But I have to bring it up because the person that I referred to in that video happens to also be the lead in this movie, and it was also written to be about this person.
No thanks.
In my original video, I never mentioned who the celebrity was, but I can't not say who it is in this case. And who I'm talking about is former adult star Ron Jeremy, and he's not the reason I watched this movie to begin with. I actually watched it because Amber Benson is in it, who played Tara in Buffy. But this man has now been convicted of 30 counts of SA against 21 victims, including a 15-year-old between the years of 2002 and 2020. So I could not watch this movie now knowing what I know. It's the same with Jeepers Creepers. It's a movie that I will never be able to rewatch, particularly now I know everything that went on behind the scenes on that movie. So I can never watch One-Eyed Monster again knowing what I know now. Slice from 2018 is a horror comedy. In a spooky small town, when a slew of pizza delivery boys are slain on the job, two daring survivors set out to catch the culprit behind the cryptic crime spree in a city where ghosts, drug dealers, and disgraced werewolves all coexist on a daily basis. Slice is a movie that had potential, but how it was actually made has had a massive knock-on effect on this entire movie. Originally, Slice wanted to be a small mini-series with about 6 episodes, and in the end, it was turned into an hour and 23-minute movie. And when I tell you that absolutely everything and absolutely nothing simultaneously happen in this movie, I'm not kidding, because they've split this movie into 2 halves, and the first 45 minutes feels like the entire pilot episode of the TV series, and then the ending part feels like what would have been the last 40 minutes of episode 6. There is nothing in the middle that actually tells you how we got from part 1 to part 2. It's kind of all over the place.
What the hell just happened?
The only way you know what has happened is there is a freeze frame montage in the middle. There is a definitive end to Act 1 in this. The credits would roll and everything. Now, there is a reason that A24 decided that this movie should only be in theatres for 1 day before it was then moved to VOD, because it's the one movie that I think A21 would like you to forget that actually exists, because it's so nothing, but so everything, and it had potential, and it's got Steve from Stranger Things in it, but in the end, it's so half-cooked. Red State from 2011 is a horror thriller. In the Midwest of the USA, 3 sex-crazed teenagers receive an invitation from a woman online who wants to hook up. When the 3 friends arrive, they soon realise they have fallen into a trap and soon must escape from the deranged leader of a Christian fundamentalist cult known as the 5 Point Trinity Church, run by infamous pastor Alvin Cooper, all while the church is under siege by ATF agents who have been ordered to destroy the terrorist cell. There is one scene in Red State which is the reason why I will never be able to rewatch this movie. If you didn't know, the fundamentalist cult in this movie is actually based on the real cult, the Westboro Baptist Church, who are the group that used to picket the funerals of veterans along with anything else that they could think of, spewing the most vile homophobia that you can possibly think of. And there is a scene in this movie where this cult has kidnapped a gay man. They have wrapped him in plastic wrap / saran wrap where you are, and they proceed to torture this man to death. And as a member of the LGBTQ+ community, it is such a difficult watch, and it was not something that I was expecting to come face to face with when I first watched this movie, and it's not something that I ever want to come face to face with again, particularly knowing how the state of the world is at the moment, because you know that this thing is now something that would very likely happen in certain places in the world. And I think anybody who is part of a minority group, regardless of what that minority group is, the last thing that you want to come face to face with unknowingly when watching a movie is hate crime against your minority group. Attack Girl Swim Team vs. the Undead from 2007 is a Japanese action horror. A high school girls' swim team is having a competition. Aki persuades her new friend Sayaka, who has just joined the school, to join the swim team despite her reluctance. However, a mysterious virus is spreading through the school just as a new vaccine starts being rolled out amongst the students. After Aki discovers the incident and decides to tell the others, she is killed, and now the swim team must take up the challenge to cope with it and begin a fierce battle.
You lied to me.
This movie lied to me, and I will never not be mad about this. I was promised a swim team in a zombie apocalypse with teachers that turn into a version of the zombies from The Sadness. And in the end, what I actually got was one sadistic teacher and then a softcore adult movie, which is really uncomfortable to watch because we're talking about minors here in this movie. and a man who turns up who uses his hypno flute to then SA these miners, and one of these miners happens to also be a spy of some sort. I'm making this movie sound way cooler than it actually is. It is so uncomfortable to watch. Like, if you're not expecting this movie to go like full-on softcore mode, and at one point it's nearly not softcore, then you are completely blindsided when this happens, and then the plot is so uncomfortable. And where's my zombie killing swim team? They disappear, and a man with a hypno flute turns up I'm so mad at this movie. I'm so mad at it. It's trash. It's trash. Like, you can watch an uncomfortable movie and feel like you need to hug a puppy after. Like, there's various levels of uncomfortable. This is the kind where I felt like I needed a lobotomy in a boiling hot bath. Like, I needed to erase all traces of it from my being. It's just... no. Slack from 2020 is a horror comedy. A possessed pair of jeans is brought to life to punish the unscrupulous practices of a trendy clothing company. Shipped to the company's flagship store, Slack pretends to wreak carnage on the staff locked in overnight to set up the new collection. It is up to Libby, a new idealistic young sales clerk, to stop the bloody rampage. Have you ever watched a movie, and although it's got a good message that it's trying to put across, there is just something about it that just doesn't quite sit right with you? And that is the movie Slack to me, and it is the perfect example of why comedy is so subjective, because things happen in this movie and I generally found myself eye-rolling rather than laughing, because the humour just went straight over my head. It wasn't for me. And while I think that the idea of this killer pair of pants is like wild and weird enough that I should have liked it, I just didn't. And there's a whole scene with mannequins in this, and I'm like, how did the possessed pair of pants now possess a bunch of mannequins? And things just, yeah, I was so lost with Slacks. Like, do I think that there are people out there who are gonna find the comedy in this really funny? Yes. Am I one of them? No.
It's just not funny.
It's a movie that wants to draw attention to what is happening in third world countries, where they are creating fast fashion products and they're in poor working conditions and they're not getting paid enough, and I 100% appreciate that part of the story and what they were trying to go for. But in the end, it was overshadowed by the fact that this is a pair of killer pants. They're a pair of jeans that have been possessed by a girl that dies at the very beginning of the film. And the message kind of gets lost until fairly far into the movie, and then it's never really wrapped up. Light from 2024 is a sci-fi horror. After crash landing in an escape pod on a dark, misty planet, the survivors must band together to fight the monstrous hosts on the inhospitable planet they now find themselves on, including a mother who is hunted by the creatures, which is drawn by the light she is using to find her missing son. This is a recent watch for me, and you know a movie isn't good if you could recreate the entire plot by simply turning off all the lights in your house, closing your curtains, and walking around your house with your phone torch on. Like, that's how bad we're talking here. And 3 rocks and a fog machine doesn't make a space planet. The inside of the spaceship is decorated with noise-cancelling foam, and the aliens are just drones with LEDs on them. Like, and it sucks to say this, because this is a movie where if they had decided to crowdfund to get some more budget and waited a year to actually release this movie, it would have been so much better, because you can't tell me that there wouldn't have been an audience who would have wanted to support this movie, because those that love sci-fi love sci-fi.
I just love it so much.
I went into this movie knowing that there was potential there, and after watching it and seeing that yes, there was potential, but it's kind of been wasted now, it makes me sad, because this movie ends up being a kind of knockoff version of the movie Underwater from 2020, but without the plot or the scenery or the aliens, just set in space. So there you have it, another 8 horror movies that I am just never gonna rewatch again for various reasons. If you love or hate any of these movies, that is perfectly fine. Horror is so subjective and it wouldn't do for us all to like the same thing. If you did enjoy the video, maybe even consider sticking around and join the Horde here on YouTube, or you can find me over on Instagram and Letterboxd at HordesOfHorror, where you can find out every single horror movie that I've been watching. But I will be back on Monday with a new mini-series that I am starting here on my channel, because it's time to finally talk about one of my favourite franchises. It's time to rank some traps from Saw. So until next time, bye.
You